Welcome to Biz Ed Denver. So glad you all could make it. Our speaker today, or our workshop today, Visions to Do Good, will be presented by Russ Kyncl of Strategic Exit LLC. Russ entered the financial services industry on April Fool's Day, 1984. Russ especially enjoys helping his clients plan for their own future, their families, and their personal philanthropy in the community. He's a graduate of the University of Colorado at Boulder, where a great professor taught him to love the personal story of history. With rousing applause, please help me welcome Russ Kyncl of Strategic Exit LLC.
It's great to be here this morning. I give this talk two ways, one with overheads and PowerPoints and one without. I find it the size is much easier to connect with just some of the really cool parts of the story without the pictures on the screen. So people often ask me, I got so interested in this topic, and it really popped on me a few years ago. Where I first really encountered Ben Franklin personally, it was early in my career in the mid-80s. As I was building my own financial practice, I was also a trainer for a financial services firm. And time management really started to come to the fore in our culture. And Ben Franklin was really early on time management. And in his autobiography, he talked about a self-improvement program, overcoming some pretty significant personal goals, his personal life and his behavior when he was in his 20s. And I knew from that study and from the underlying part of time management that at midlife, when he was 45, he intentionally transferred control of his company to other people in terms of the day-to-day so he could focus on science. He's one of the major early physicists to study electricity, way beyond just the kite thing we all heard about in elementary school, but that was an experiment they did. And also later statesmanship in politics, and he was very involved with that. And so I went back to him, having been influenced on time management about 30, when I was 29 and 30. Went back a few years ago, really wanting to study that midlife change, because I was really kind of wondering what I should be doing in my life. And I thought, I'd love to be some inspiration. And as I was studying that, the story of Ben Franklin's philanthropy popped to me. And it really blew me away, just how consistent he was. And so the arc of the story, it begins when he was born in the colony of Massachusetts Bay, Boston, which was a town of about 10,000 people. By the way, I want to do another quick cul-de-sac just at 30,000 feet. It hit me last month. I was thinking about this topic, and Franklin lived to be in his 80s. He was productive past age 80 still in many, many things. And it's only 3 lifetimes ago that he passed away, but 80-year lifetime. In 1790, it's not even quite 3. So he's born about 4 lifetimes ago. And just the extraordinary change from then to now is just something amazing to think about. So with that, I want to give you kind of an introduction of the overview, and then we'll move into content. Did you turn it on? Excuse me?
Did you turn on your mic?
I did. Is
okay.
it not coming up?
I think it's okay.
You're all here.
No, it's...
Is it? Do I have it?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. He was born in the very early 1700s. He was raised Puritan, a poor family. He got into philanthropy when he was 10 or 11 years old. There's a cool story of an influence of a book that I'll talk about. He was involved with philanthropic projects his entire life. And then he set up a major charitable bequest in his will that's actually still educating hundreds of young people today in Boston and Philadelphia. And then there's also involvement of some other major people of American history. Andrew Carnegie is going to turn up in the early 20th century in this story in Boston. And it's not just about Ben Franklin. As far as philanthropy, it's a very broad topic. Most people think of philanthropy as just giving money, which Franklin certainly did. But there's also philanthropy of mentoring, of relationship, of time and volunteering, of presenting ideas that other people can implement that benefit the community. And then, of course, the ultimate planning that he did in his will, which you can Google this. I think it's an extraordinary document. So anyway, with that, we'll launch into the details. As I already said, he was born in Boston. His parents were soap makers and candle makers, so very lowly trade. There were 10 kids in the family, and they were poor and really struggled. Boston is a small town. I grew up in northeastern Colorado in Otis Brush, Fort Morgan. Fort Morgan's got about 12,000 people, so it was 20% bigger than Boston at that time. And if there had been railroad tracks in the early 1700s, the Franklins were on the wrong side of it. He had 2 years of formal education, elementary school at Boston Latin. The family story was they didn't have money to afford to keep him in school, or he should have gone to Harvard, and he didn't. He just had his 2 years. He was also something of a heretic to the Puritans, even as a teenager, so I think maybe that had some involvement as well, that he would have been too much of an annoying thorn in the side of the Puritan leadership. But he was raised Puritan as a Calvinist Christian, and you'll see that turn up in some of his letters as we talk about it later. We know that he read a book that was actually written by Cotton Mather, who was the Puritan pastor, head church at North Church, Boston, also the president of Harvard, a prolific writer, very brilliant man. The name of the book is Essays to Do Good. It's still in print, and I'll have quotes that I'll talk about as we go through the talk. By the way, one other point of introduction, I intend to talk about 30 minutes, but we'll have another 15 minutes so we can interact with each other, pair off, and bring back to the group about our own philanthropy. I want to really bring it into modern times with us. So we know about the influence of this book because Franklin, when he was representing the United States in France, at that time, he's gone from this poor kid that nobody knew about to a world statesman. He's representing us in France, to the royal court of France during the Revolutionary War. And in 1779, he wrote a letter to Samuel Mather, who was Cotton Mather's one surviving son. And here's what he said. Permit me to mention one little instance, which, though it relates to myself, will not be quite uninteresting to you. When I was a boy, I met with a book entitled Essays to Do Good, which I think was written by your father. It had been so little regarded by its former possessor that several leaves of it were torn out, but the remainder gave me such a turn of thinking as to have an influence on my conduct through life. For I have always set a greater value on the character of a doer of good than any other kind of reputation. And if I have been, as you seem to think, a useful citizen, that's pure Franklin, by the way, later in his life, so understated, the public owes the advantage of it to that book. And I imagine that the reason we know about that letter is it had to have been a treasure to the Mather family the instant the day it was received. Cotton Mather died in some disgrace from having been involved in the Salem witch trials. And this, in a way, is like a rehabilitation to me, that here's this major scientist, this major world citizen now, saying that, your dad's ideas changed your trajectory. I'll quote out of that book as we go through some of the talk, and you'll hear echoes of it in Franklin's letters throughout his life as well. So anyway, that planted the seed. Franklin was indentured to his older brother, who was a printer. He and his brother went after Cotton Mather in a very public way, demeaning him for supporting smallpox vaccination. It was a live vaccine with 2% mortality, but if you didn't have the vaccine and smallpox hit, it was over 20% mortality. Mather actually was also a scientist and an observer, and Franklin and his older brother went after Mather in a very, very public way, ridiculing him for supporting the vaccine. And I'd get too far of a thing there, but just to say there was some really bad blood there in a small town. A few years later, when Franklin was able, because they actually had to make Franklin the owner of the paper, or his older brother would go to jail. It wasn't a free press. The legislature wanted to shut James Franklin up, so that allowed Franklin to escape his own indentureship to his brother, because he was now the owner of the company, so he could bail. So he escaped down to Philadelphia. Nobody knew where he went. And close to a year later, he came back on a victory lap tour, basically shoving it in his brother's face while he was doing. Cotton Mather reached out to him and asked him to come over and meet with him at his library at his house. And it was a 2-hour meeting. We don't know much. We don't really know anything of the details, other than Franklin talked at the end of it. He warned him about a low door getting out of this home study, and Franklin didn't listen to it. He banged his head. Mather was never one to let the opportunity for sermon get by him. And he says, "You know something, Ben? I've noticed something in life. The further you stoop, the easier it goes." I think Franklin knew he'd been reprimanded, although I don't think he ever admitted it anywhere. You talk about seeing other people's arrogance get them into trouble. But I think his own arrogance got him in a fair amount of trouble in his early life, too, and it was a lesson that he never forgot. So that's a philanthropy of ideas in the book, a philanthropy of mentorship, just in that one meeting, reaching out to this kind of pain in the backside teenager who got mad at that point. Let's quote Mather a little bit. And it's an invaluable honor to do good. It's an incomparable pleasure. A man must look upon himself as dignified and gratified by God when an opportunity to do good is put into his hands. He must embrace it with rapture as enabling him to answer the great end of his being. Reader, though perhaps thou art one who makest but a little figure in the world, a brother of low degree, yet behold a vast encouragement. A little man may do a great deal of harm. And pray, why may not a little man do a great deal of good? It is possible that the wisdom of a poor man may start a proposal which may save a city, serve a nation. The strength of a single hair applied to a wheel that has other wheels depending on it may pull up an oak or pull down a house. So just that idea of how much impact we can have on other people. Other parts of Mather's book, he talks about just looking around your neighborhood, seeing who needs help. And if you can help them, or maybe you know somebody that's better able to help whatever that need is. But Mather was a very practical, community-oriented person in many ways. And it was just look for what needs doing and get busy, basically. It was kind of a lot of the message of that book. Here's a quote then from Franklin as far as motivation. Even though he rejected Puritanism, he's a very interesting study, and it'd be a whole other topic on his religious beliefs. But he was constantly throughout his life challenging his Christian friends to actually act as though they believed what Jesus said. He was really in their face. And Jesus said some pretty practical stuff about philanthropy. In Matthew 25, there's this image of the sheep and the goats in the Gospel of Matthew, right at the end of Jesus' earthly ministry. And he's basically saying, if you've got your theology right and you're not helping other people, you're a goat, you are in big trouble with man. If you're a sheep, you're looking around, and he said, for I was hungry and you fed me, I was thirsty and you gave me water, I needed clothing, you loaned me, you gave me some clothing. So Jesus has this very practical list of helping other people in his setting. And so here's Franklin writing about it, actually to a Christian friend. For my own part, when I am employed in serving others, I do not look upon myself as conferring favors, but as paying debts. In my travels and since my settlement, I have received much kindness from men, to whom I shall never have any opportunity of making the least direct return, and numberless mercies from God, who is infinitely above being benefited by our services. These kindnesses from men I can therefore only return on their fellow man, and I can only show my gratitude for those mercies from God by a readiness to help his other children and my brethren. For I do not think that thanks and compliments, though repeated weekly, can discharge our real obligations to each other, and much less those to our Creator. So he was always looking for opportunity. Some of the projects he was involved with his lifetime, over his lifetime, one of my favorites was his partnership with George Whitefield, who was the great Anglican evangelist of the Great Awakening, the religious awakening in the United States. He was like a Billy Graham of his day. Franklin was Whitefield's best friend, even though he dumped Christianity. So that's like the oddest odd couple of American history, one of them. He would stay at Franklin's house when he was in Philadelphia, but Whitefield was viewed by the professional paid clergy as a threat. And so he could very seldom speak in churches. And he would just be out in the open fields, kind of a tent meeting sort of thing. And so he and Franklin cooked up the idea that they would go to the Pennsylvania colonial legislature and ask them to pass a law that if he and Whitefield could raise what today would be a couple $1 million, that the legislature would match funds and they could build a lecture hall in Philadelphia that was not controlled by any church, that was just public, and that anybody could speak there, regardless of religion or lack of religion, and they could be under oath. When it was built, so there's a combination of politics and fundraising and philanthropy and just all mixed up together. And when it wasn't being used very much as a lecture hall, it was actually repurposed, and it became the first building of the University of Pennsylvania, which is the first secular institution of higher education in the United States. And so that was the beginning of that. And Franklin served on the board of that university for a long time. So that's a little snippet, a little side effect. My favorite story of Whitefield and Franklin is when they first met. Franklin went to one of these tent meetings, and Whitefield would have a double altar call. There would be a call asking people to commit their lives to Jesus, just like Billy Graham did. But then there would be a second altar call to some practical philanthropy. The principal one was an orphanage school in Georgia that would raise kids up and train them in the trade. And Franklin was so moved by that second close that he emptied his wallet into the offering plate. And as frugal as he was completely embarrassed with himself. And so when he went back the second night, he left his wallet at home because he wasn't going to get taken like that again. And he was so moved again that he convinced a friend that was with him to empty his wallet on a promise that he would pay him back. So that was the beginning of those two men knowing each other, was Whitefield selling Franklin so successfully on this philanthropic project that he would empty his wallet twice, or his wallet, a friend's wallet. So anyway, that's that part, University of Pennsylvania. Other things he was involved with, the first subscription library in the United States in Philadelphia. Religiously, he was a major donor to the first Jewish synagogue in the United States, which was also, I believe, in Philadelphia. And he was very supportive of religion, I think, especially if it was practical in his mind or could be helpful. But with that, let's move on. There's many things I can talk about that he was involved in. I mean, there's the first firefighting company, paving streets. He was just always looking at practical projects. In his will, and I want one other thing before I get off it. The friendship with Whitefield launched Franklin to be truly wealthy because Whitefield gave him the exclusive right to publish his sermons in all 13 colonies, and they were runaway bestsellers. So that was also a business partnership as a printer. So the Franklin's will, I've already mentioned he lived to be quite old, to be 84 almost, I think. He died in 1790. The second to last will he had, he left half of his estate to go towards building what would basically be a second Erie Canal, but in Pennsylvania. Instead of, I believe the Erie comes across upstate New York. But before he died, that became evident that wasn't going to be necessary for some reason. And so he did a codicil to his will just a few months before he died. He died in April of 1790, towards the last quarter of the year before, so a few months before his death. And a codicil is where you strike out one area of a estate document and you replace it with new language. So it's, legal term for an addendum, or not really an addendum, but an edit of it. And in this codicil, he set up a charitable bequest that's still having an impact today. I'm going to read some excerpts from his will. I love this document. It reads like a letter. Parts of it where he's explaining his motivation. It was holographic. It was just his own handwriting. And a friend of mine here in town, John Warnick, who's a major trust and estate lawyer here in Denver, he does text boxes that aren't part of the legal document, but they're in it, where the motivation of his clients is explained. And John was so excited when I shared this with him, because he's like, those are text boxes. And they really are. And I just want to share that with you. It is, in the first paragraph, it has been an opinion that he who receives an estate from his ancestors is under some kind of obligation to transmit the same to their posterity. This obligation does not lie on me, who never inherited a shilling from any ancestor or relation. I shall, however, if it is not diminished by some accident before my death, leave a considerable estate among my descendants and relations. The above observation is made merely as some apology to my family for making bequests that do not appear to have any immediate relation to their advantage. I have considered that among artisans, good apprentices are most likely to make good citizens, and having myself been bred to a manual art printing in my native town of Boston, and afterwards assisted to set up my business in Philadelphia by the kind loans of money from two friends there, which was the foundation of my fortune and all other utility in life that may be ascribed to me. I wish to be useful, even after my death, if possible, in forming and advancing other young men that may be serviceable to their country in both these towns. To this end, I devote 2,000 pounds sterling, so it's about 4 million in today's dollars, of which I give 1,000 thereof to the inhabitants of the town of Boston and Massachusetts, and the other 1,000 to the inhabitants of the city of Philadelphia, in trust to and for the uses, intents, and purposes hereinafter mentioned and declared. What he had done also in his will, this book was just published. It's called The Loyal Son, and I'm about 100 pages into it. It's a great book. Franklin, one of the great mysteries of American history is Franklin had a son by some girlfriend before he was married, or as he was getting married, to Deborah Reed. And both Franklin and Deborah Reed were, in a sense, damaged goods for the days. Deborah Reed, they were a relationship, probably lovers as late teenagers, 17, 18 years old. And then Franklin took off. I think it's the first time he went to London. He never wrote her. So when he came back, she was married to somebody else who was a ne'er-do-well that blew all the money that came with her, in a few months, and took off. So Deborah Reed's first husband, I don't think they know whatever happened to him. He might have died. He might have been married to somebody else in London. He might have died in Barbados. But anyway, it was very questionable. In the meantime, Franklin had this son, William, by some woman. One of the great mysteries of American history is, I would say at this point, it's safe to say we will never know who William's mother was. It's very well hidden, secret. But Franklin took possession of William when he was weaned at 8 months old and brought him back to this new marriage with Deborah Reed. And they raised him as their own son. And then he and William were very, very close until the Revolutionary War, when William was the governor of New Jersey and sided with the king. So in the second paragraph of his will, he appears to give William a significant bequest. It's actually completely worthless to him. It's land in Nova Scotia, which is absolutely worthless to an American citizen in 1790. It's in Canada. It was not his property anymore. The Crown controlled it. And it was, their relationship never recovered from that. So he said, other than that, it's a very trivial thing. He's not to receive a shilling of the estate that he tried so hard to pry in. So there's real edge in that paragraph. But on the charitable bequest, what ended up happening with it was basically a loan program where it would loan up to about $140,000 today's money to young businessmen in the trades, today's blue-collar trades, to set up their businesses. And then they would repay it back, and it could compound up. Franklin was very fascinated with compound interest as a businessman and an investor. And at 101 years after his death, there was to be a bequest, a transfer of half of this out to charities. And at 201 years, so in 1991, there was a second distribution of the rest of the estate. I'm going to talk about the Philadelphia side first because it's simple and it's easy. And then I'm going to spend some time on the Massachusetts side because it was a real complicated political mess. And it very much speaks to us today. Philadelphia, the first distribution in the 1890s went towards building the Benjamin Franklin Institute, which is a science museum. And I've never been to Philadelphia, but I imagine it's like the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, that I haven't been to. And I actually had a client whose father invented the car radio, the Philco radio, Philadelphia company, and she remembers going to that museum as a child and seeing it. The second bequest that came out in the 1990s was actually controlled by the City Council of Philadelphia. And in honor of Benjamin Franklin's wishes around helping young tradespeople, it provides scholarships. And I think it's approaching 800 scholarships now since then for young men and women to become trained as plumbers, electricians, copy repair, so any hands-on blue-collar trade. And half of the scholarships go to residents of Philadelphia, half go to residents of Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. Up in the complicated story, in Massachusetts, the first distribution, and there it was controlled, having something to do with charters of local politics, by the Massachusetts State Legislature. So you had this bequest of several $1 million come out early 20th century, or towards the end of the 19th century. It ended up in a gigantic political fight where they could not come to a decision. The Massachusetts Supreme Court finally intervened, and just as activist judges, this has been going on a long time, they set up a charity by judicial fiat. They said, they named the board, there were going to be 8 business people, and the three clergymen that were the head of the largest Protestant churches in Boston, and the mayor of Boston. And that they were to set up a trade school, like Warren Tech, here in Lakewood, to train people in blue-collar trades. Well, the board was set up by judicial fiat, and then the board members fought and argued over what the curriculum would be. One of the board members was a personal friend of Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie intervened, and he said, if you'll just use the curriculum we're already successfully using in New York at a trade school, I'll match funds. And so Andrew Carnegie, who I believe was personally inspired by Benjamin Franklin, they're very similar stories. Grew up poor, had to rely on libraries to teach themselves things, and very practical businessmen. So they matched funds, and he said if the city of Boston will donate the land. And so that institute, it's the Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology. So those of you that have been in Boston, that was funded out of Ben Franklin's estate with matching funds from Andrew Carnegie and the land being provided by the city of Boston. And it is still graduating. They've got hundreds of students actually from 40 different countries that come there now to get an education. And they have the usual blue-collar trades and then 4 engineering degrees, 4-year degrees there. So very much still in the spirit. You're shaking your head, Jonas. Have you been there? Or okay. So anyway, you have this incredible legacy that's still coming down to today, both cities. I think very much in the wishes and the spirit of what Ben Franklin would like. By the way, he was inspired on that 200 years. It was some French philosopher wrote a treatise about leaving something 500 years and then going to charity with compounding and what it could do. And Franklin said he thought it was pretty ostentatious to think this experiment of federal government they were setting up would last 500 years, but he thought 200 was pretty safe and about right, I think. And so that's why the distributions came out at 101 and 201 years. And here we are. You know, all these years later, it's still functioning, it's still working. I think with that, it's, you know, to kind of summarize, I'll go back and I'll open it up for questions, and I have some questions for you to ask each other and have a discussion here for a bit. You know, he got into it through a book, you know, the personal meeting with Cotton Mather, as far as I think his arrogance and issues as a young man. You know, some of the things that he did throughout his life of people all over the map as far as religion and engagement in the community. And then this really visionary bequest as well. And these are things that are all accessible to all of us as citizens of this country. One thing I forgot to say in the beginning is one of his major biographers calls Benjamin Franklin the first American. And I think in many ways he really is. He was born in the early part of his life, was a very devoted citizen of the British Empire, you know, and of Britain. Of course, the Revolutionary War was on the side. One of my favorite quotes of his was at the Declaration of Independence, the signing of it. It was, "A gentleman, we shall all hang together, we shall hang separately." You know, that was a major break. And then helping found this country and being here at the Constitutional Convention. My favorite quote of his theirs was somebody, a passerby, asked him as they were leaving, having passed figuring out the Constitution. He said, "Well, what kind of government have you given us?" And he said, "A republic if you can keep it." It's a very pithy comment about democracy. I think with that, any questions here as a group? And then I'll have some questions for you to ask each other and talk. Yeah.
So just trying to get the timeline straight on the Boston part. Was the first bequest, the 1891?
Yes.
Or that sounded like it spilled over to...
It's 1891 spilled over into early 20th century.
That's where Andrew Kennedy. But what about the 1991? Or what came of that?
I believe it also went to that institute.
Okay.
It just stayed there.
Just stayed there.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'm aware of in Boston.
Okay.
State.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what would Benjamin Franklin think about quantum computing? You know,
Oh, I think you'd be amazed.
Yeah.
He wrote stuff. He really wanted to be around another 200 years just to see what would happen. He was very curious. And, you know, it was mind-blowing. They thought they had physics all figured out not too long after he died. You know, certainly by the late 1800s. That certainly hasn't been true. It just gets crazier and crazier. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think he would have been fascinating. Yeah.
So my question is about this adult-centered learning that Benjamin initiated. These circles of men that would get together and teach one another.
Yes,
Junto. And I'm very fascinated with this because I feel like it's happening today with our kids on YouTube.
Okay.
You know, they're teaching each other about skateboards and about video games, and they're building their own little tribes with kids all over the world. And, you know, they're going to school, and that same model is not supported by their teachers and their principals.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I'm wondering, how did that develop back then in those days, and what can we learn from it?
I think I'm not a historian, so I'm going to qualify that I could have some of this wrong, but I think Alec de Tocqueville talked about Americans organize even then, and I think that was very much the spirit of it. And so modern renditions would be things like Rotary Club, these civic organizations that are volunteer, philanthropically oriented, and common-minded people getting together and sharing ideas. I think it's a very, very American thing to get organized. I'm going to do a huge leap. My father-in-law was on Omaha Beach, D-Day, in World War II. And 29th Division, this horrific carnage where they landed the wrong places, the naval bombardments had missed, their units were literally just decimated, the early landing. He came on about midday, about noon. I think it took a military force of Americans to take that beach, because they reorganized themselves into squads that would advance on these pillboxes and artillery positions, not being where they were supposed to be, without their command structures in place, with entire units annihilated. But they got organized, they got busy. And so I think it's very much an American spirit. And I'm sure it's other places in the world is too, but it's something that's particularly strong still in American culture. Is, get a few friends together, do something. So that's a huge leap, historical leap from Benjamin Franklin to D-Day. But I think many cultures of the world, people will be waiting until somebody told them what to do. And maybe our kids are in that spirit. I never thought of that YouTube thing, education of each other. So that's my thought, off the cuff. So I want to jump to something with my reading this morning. Franklin, with some of the French Indian Wars, he got busy and organized a militia when the state, you couldn't do that today. We've got more of a government structure that does get things done now. But he just went out and got that organized on his own when the Pennsylvania legislature wasn't doing it. So it's very much in that spirit. And that junto is an interesting group.
How do you spell that?
Well, I say it like in Spanish because I speak Spanish, but junto, J-U-N-T-O. So it was a philosophical group, basically. They would meet, and you may know more about it than I do.
Well, they would choose one person to go. Yep. And that person would go as long as he had beer in his mug. And after he finished his beer, he was done.
He was done. He had the floor until he drank all of his beer. Yeah. I need to study that more. That sounds like fun. What I'd like people to do is pair off. I've been quoting out of a little book that I wrote. I was quoting the quotes, but it's called Business to Do Good, like my talk. If anybody wants to buy one, it's $5 or $10. If you got $5 or $10 or $2, just whatever. I donate it all actually to the scholarship fund in Philadelphia. You can give to the Philadelphia Foundation. If you put Ben and the number 1 in the memo line, it drops into that scholarship fund with Ben Franklin's estate. And this is my little thing I can do for that, just to honor him. But I wanted you to pair off and just ask each other, because a lot of philanthropy is, where does your heart connect to? Your intuition, your heart, where are you connected the most? And in my book, I talk about stuff my wife and I do, which, in those connections, but people are motivated differently for why they give or involved in different philanthropies. One of our favorite things now, our kids are all grown, and we volunteer in schools. My wife in the public schools in Jefferson County, and she teaches first graders. One day, she takes them out and does reading. And it's the kids that are advanced, the kids that are behind, that aren't in the middle of the class. And she just has the most incredible stories, these first graders every year. And she teaches with our daughter, who's now at Albany Medical College, becoming a PA. So she's 26, I think. Sorry, but yeah, 26. I've stopped to do the math in my head. The teacher was our daughter's 4th grade teacher, her first year out of college, and she was an awesome teacher her first year. So, and then together we volunteered at Urupe Jesuit, which is an inner city Jesuit high school at 44th and Tennyson. And those kids, man, they know they're being given the opportunity of a lifetime, and they show up to play. They are so much fun to interact with. And they have to work a day a week in businesses. There's like 140 businesses around town, larger than mine, that they have like 5 kids in each slot. So they're getting a business education while they're getting a Jesuit education, and it's really cool. But and they're mostly immigrants, but they're Americans already. So I'm sorry, I tear up whenever I give this talk. It just hits me. Obviously, that hits us very deeply. My wife and I are completely different people. Early in our marriage, I used to tell her, quit trying to explain to me how you arrived at a decision. I know you make great decisions. I'll never be able to figure out how you think. But together, we can volunteer at that school and both just be fully engaged, and it's so much fun. So with that, I want you to pair off. And take a little time. I want you to talk about what have you been involved. Just pair off individually, and if there's an odd number, I'll talk with somebody. But what have you been involved with in terms of very broad definition point, with your own volunteering? What tugs at your heartstrings with it? And then we can kind of report back about that. You two, we just kind of go to and from here. You and I can talk, Anthony. That's it.
When I was in my 20s, I did involved in I did
I'm Jewish. I like to go to adult education principles involved but I mean the past but I like this idea of like when you mentioned volunteering guys, community engagement involved and working in businesses, I think that's important. I never had an internship or I had like menial jobs but I feel like I think actually being involved I feel like we're just
the earliest thing I'm aware of was the library card.
they're surroundings and we don't care if people see people.
He needed that library.
I feel like yesterday was just reminded about how we just like take humans for granted. It's been around for so long now.
Yeah, that's so it's
We have no routine.
But I think that's
I mean, like from a historical perspective, I feel like since World War II, maybe I need to do more research on this, right? This is the kind of ridiculous comics episode of live comparing relationships, but it just, I feel like maybe American people were much more patriotic back then. Yeah, oh, possibly, definitely. Right.
Let's go back to Nate.
I think I'm going to need to take the floor back. I'm so pleased everybody is still talking and engaged, and hope if you want to hang around after a little bit and engage more with it, that would be really good. But I think we're coming up on a time where I need to get it back to Nate. Nate, should probably give you the floor back. We're coming right.
Do you want to get feedback, or do you want to?
Just for a couple minutes.
Take a couple, like maybe 5 minutes for quick shares.
All right. Yeah. Anybody want to do quick shares from your conversation? Maybe.
Brag about your partner.
Yeah. There you go.
They would appreciate it.
Anybody want to stick their neck out?
Judging from the population in the front row, I'd say.
No.
Well, I could just briefly share what I was just telling Emily is that, I'm 68 years old, so I've had a lifetime to be involved with volunteering, quite a few decades. And back when I was in Wisconsin, I was super involved with the League of Women Voters, and I was in a different community organization. I was very public policy centric. And then when I came here, I didn't know anybody. That's really cool because no one's going to nag you into going anywhere or calling somebody or doing anything. So I just recreated myself. And then when I found Toastmasters out here, that's where I've actually, Russ is in Toastmasters, that's where I've done a lot of that time and mentorship and mentoring individuals and entire clubs. Like, I'm currently a mentor for my own club in many ways. So that's how I've done. I haven't thought that philanthropically. My takeaway on this, when we get to that, is, or where would I set up that kind of request? Because mostly I just give my money to my church, any time. So, but I was just thinking how we go through our, people like around me in age will relate to this. I think how we may not have a straight trajectory, or maybe we do. But mine has changed a lot. Where I've, given my energy, my time.
For those that don't know, Toastmasters is a speaking club. It's all volunteer speaking and leadership, and a great organization. A lot of great clubs around Denver. I'm going to go ahead and use this, kind of pass the mic around.
I got a boom mic.
Oh, you do? Okay, so that's good. Okay. Anybody else? The back rows.
Well, ours was pretty much, there are ways you can contribute via cash, but yet the mentorship, I love that, the apprenticeship. We used to have that, where people would learn from people that came before us, but yet the mission was to leave this planet better than where we found it. Continue the legacy of learning and exploration and making things great. The vision to do good.
Yep.
Loved it. Well done.
Any other comments? Good. Well, I'll stay after. Be happy to do that. And great. You bet. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good to be here.
Good job. Thanks. There is crying a boost. It's moving. I was really touched that you.
I've never gotten through this talk without at least cheering up. It's too cool.
I love it. So we're going to recognize, so we gave you an action form. We're going to recognize the allies today. They're going to talk to you about an offer they have. If you'd like to engage with any of us, you can just check the box and we'll get a hold of you. No pressure. So our venue ally spaces. The way to engage with spaces is to walk up to the front desk and ask for a tour. They're wonderful. It's a beautiful space. The environment does make a difference. Russ, how can people engage with you?
That's an oversized bookmark. Call me if you want to talk about anything philanthropic or planning wise. Happy to get together and visit.
Awesome, thank you. For me, if you'd like to engage in the work we're doing at the Kite and Dart group, which has some parallels, I feel super validated by what you were sharing.
Good.
You just check a box there. Also, you can go to my website, kitedart.com, and on the front page, you can opt in for a free 30-minute coaching session with no strings attached. Ashley,
yes.
How can people engage with you?
You can engage with me by taking 30 minutes and just chatting about the issues. A lot of people struggle with well, I have to clean up my office before Ashley comes, and that's not necessary. That's what I like to help you with. So, yes.
Anthony, how can people engage with you?
Great. Well, if you'd like to learn how, we broadcasted this event today, just check your box or go to anthonypritchard.com and I'll show you how to be the best video spokesperson that your business can have.
Awesome. Our social media ally is Laura Atencio. If you'd like to engage with her, just check the box. And the big kahuna, the head honcho, Drew Shockley, would love to talk to you about what makes your business special and unique in the world and how you can communicate that to your potential clients via the internet, on a website. And he's also very good. He's responsible for all of the boost collateral and meetup and all that you see. So we love that guy. Just check on the box right there and Drew will get a hold of you. Okay, cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back through and we are going to claim our actions. So I want you to do this, and if you can do it in one breath, that's great. Stand up. Tell us what your action is going to be. Oops, wait, hold on. Stand up. First state your name and your company, and then tell us what your action, your new action is going to be. And let's start with Joyce again. Go ahead, Joyce.
Joyce Feistel, Boomer Social Media Tutor. I'm going to start to put thought into how I would structure a bequest as part of my will. Because right now the money's going to either my husband, if he's still alive, probably not, so then it'd go to my kids and their family. So I'm thinking, well, there could be other ways to split it up, like Ben did.
Awesome. Thank you, Joyce.
Emily Downs, Imago Visual. I'm going to figure out my next philanthropic move. So I think that I have been doing some volunteering and I'm not at the moment. And I think that that's really something I need to get back into.
Ashley Sims with Let Me Help You, and I'm going to copy Emily. I did a lot of volunteering in college, and then I graduated, and that was kind of the end. So find another home.
Pat Berger, Specialized Accounting, and kind of along that same line is to really evaluate where I'm devoting my energies to be sure it's supporting what's important, what makes me feel good so that I can then share that with the people that I'm volunteering for.
Joshua Berman, Denver Tax Return Service. Again, just kind of, I'm not doing a lot of volunteering at all right now and getting back into it and finding out how I can help people and reconnecting with a larger community.
Carol Wolf, the Posidyne Group, really revisiting the League of Women Voters. Used to be very active in that. Good group, and following our heart and touching our local community right here. Well done. Thank you, Russ.
Karen Swanson with Early Bird Store, and my passion for helping really comes through with animals and children. So one of the things that I looked at was for social business with my online store. I want a percentage of my profits to go to organizations that help those. Probably my first one would be the Humane Society, specifically the Detroit Humane Society, because that's where I'm from. And probably my second will be Mosaic, which is a performing arts group in Detroit as well, for children that come in thinking they're not going to probably graduate from high school, let alone go to college, but by the time they're at the end of the program, 100% right now are going to college.
Oh, I'm Ethan Chen with Trans America. I should get more involved in the volunteer activity.
Corey Gooch, CoreyGooch.com, and I run 2 meetup groups, and I've been thinking of ideas for this month, and I think it'd be a great idea to have a volunteer opportunity for both of those meetup groups. Just another way to get all of us together and support the community.
Anthony Pritchard, and I learned that I was a philanthropist. I thought it was just, you could only be a philanthropist if you gave lots of money, but I guess you can volunteer your time too and still be philanthropic.
You do a lot of that. Yes.
I'll share too. What I got was that there's this legacy of philanthropy and business that's written into the DNA of our culture, and that gives me that's the work I'm doing, so that really touched me. And then the action I'll do is I'm working on a project right now that's designed to bring patronage back to the arts in music so that artists can make art freely without having to worry about selling it. And so I'm going to be drawing a little bit on those readings as far as that's concerned to kind of back up what we're talking about. So thank you. How great is that all those actions, all these people were inspired to action? That's neat. It's awesome. We encourage you to actually do that. Thank you very much, Facebook Live, boostbized.com. Talk to you soon.